take a look at some improvements to assemblies inside SOLIDWORKS 2017. Here we have an assembly, and the first thing that we'll look at is the tree. So within our tree, the way the components display are as follows. You see the component name, followed by the configuration name, followed by the display state that's being referenced. Now, this can be really useful information. It's important to see which configuration that you're using, but quite a lot of the time, if you create a component inside SOLIDWORKS, you will have a single configuration with a single display state. In those situations, it actually makes the tree look a little bit cluttered in displaying that information. So we now have a new option within tree display to not show configuration display state names if only one exists. So if I toggle that on, you can see it removes quite a lot of that information. Where we do have multiple configurations, you can see that the configuration name still displays with the relevant display state also. Also within our tree display options, there is a new option here to group component instances. If we toggle that on, it essentially folderizes multiple instances of a component, which you can access directly from expanding out the icon like so. So again, another nice way of cleaning up your tree. If we look at the actual assembly itself within the graphics area, we have two groups of components. We have this group here and this group here. Now, this group of components at the top is fixed, it won't move, but this whole sub-assembly, if you like, is completely free to move. Now, if we go to a side view, you'll see that this is sitting quite a distance underneath this. Now, what I want to do here is I want to make that face and that face together. And basically what would happen in previous releases of SOLIDWORKS, it would bring those faces together, but this group of components would sit still beneath this group of components. What we'll find now is when we come to make those two items together, it will make the points on the faces that you click on together, giving you a much more predictable result. We'll just add a couple of concentric mates in here to define the location of this sub-assembly. The next improvement we see is to mating conical surfaces. So we have these countersunk screws and these countersunk holes. Now, if I was to mate those two items together coincident, in previous releases it would have mated the screw in the hole the wrong way round. And the only way to get around that problem would be to rotate the screw around prior to mating it so it's roughly in the right orientation before it goes in. Now you'll see that it gives a much more predictable result and mates right the first time. We'll just go ahead and open up a sub-assembly. If we have a look at this sub-assembly, we have this head here, and I'm just going to go ahead and open that in its own window. Now you'll see that this whole assembly is made up of imported parts. So it's been downloaded, let's say, from a website and converted to SOLIDWORKS geometry, and therefore what we have is this imported symbol within our tree. Now, it's possible for me to run FeatureWorks on this and recognize the features. And what that will do is it will create a feature tree for me, which then makes it very easy for me to go in and just make adjustments to either the sketches or the features that are there. So you can see here that I've just removed the chamfer. Now, one of the problems in running FeatureWorks on a component after it's been used in, let's say, multiple assemblies, so you've taken that component, you've mated it in position, is that when you run FeatureWorks on it, it effectively changes all the face IDs of the model. So any mates that were hanging off of this component in another assembly would at that point fail because it wouldn't be able to find the original face. What happens inside SOLIDWORKS now is it maintains those face IDs. So if we switch back to our assembly, you can see we see no mate errors, and all the mates are maintained correctly. Now, another thing that people like to do when they import an assembly from, let's say, the internet again, is rather than having to manage the assembly file and all the components within that file, they'll take it and they'll save it away as a single part file. This means that you have one file to manage rather than multiple files to manage. The way you do that is you go to File, Save As, and you save it as a part file. And we have a tick box here called Preserve Geometry References. Now this is quite important. So we'll just go ahead and save that away. And you can now see we've got a multi-body part. If we switch back to the main assembly here, what we can do is we can take our sub-assembly and we can use the Replace Components option, and we can replace it with the multi-body part that we've saved away. Now, in previous releases, any mates inside this assembly at this stage would fail because the face IDs of the geometry would be different. What happens is when you save a assembly as a part, the face IDs are now maintained, meaning you can replace a component and all the mates continue to work. So a very nice update there. We'll also find that if we open up the drawing of this, any balloons attached to that component are also maintained too. So to summarize there, we now have more options for tree display. We can group similar components together. We have better, more predictable placement while mating. We can preserve our geometry references. We didn't see this, but we can now cancel over defining mates before they were forced to solve. And when we're doing distance mates to cylindrical components, we can now choose to mate them center to center, inside to inside, or outside to outside.